Francine York from San Francisco, model, Miss San Francisco, model from San Francisco. Tell me about San Francisco. Is that where you, show business?
No, actually, I was born in Minnesota.
Right.
And I was a Miss Minnesota contestant, and then I had a modeling job, and I traveled, and I ended up in San Francisco, and I decided to stay there, entered the Miss San Francisco contest, became a Miss San Francisco, and was sort of discovered there. I was a top model, and then I was a showgirl for about 6 months of my life, and was discovered and was brought down to Hollywood from San Francisco.
Showgirl in San Francisco?
At a club called Bimbo's.
I know it very
You know
well.
Bimbo's?
60, isn't it 165 or something like that? Was
Bimbo's.
Bimbo's, really showgirl.
And I was very young, and they didn't allow us to go out in the audience and even have a drink with anyone unless a woman was at the table. I was very protected. It isn't like an 18-year-old of today. It's very different. And then I came down here, and
who really discovered you? And Jerry Lewis, I understand.
Well, I think
was it?
Jerry Lewis was the first one to put me in all these big movies, yes. I started with It's Only Money, which was directed by Frank Tashlin. And then I did The Nutty Professor, The Family Jewels, The Patsy, Disorderly Orderly.
How many movies you did with
I did six.
With that crazy man? Is he crazy?
I think he's wonderful. Jerry, I think, is just an absolute genius. When we did the Nutty Professor, he would say action, put in the teeth, and become that character right before your eyes. He was just phenomenal. The last one I did with him, which I believe you have some photos there, was called Cracking Up. And I played a French marquise from the 15th century. And I had to do a very, very heavy French accent. But the thing was, we spoke fractured French, which we were not speaking French at all. But in this country, people didn't know it. It was subtitled, so the average American doesn't know, you know. So we were doing things like, je ne qu'est-ce que du défaut, oh, je ne qu'est tu, oh, mais non des pas défaut, j'ai tout pays. And so
you mean you did that on film, and French people in the audience heard that?
In France, they thought it was hysterical.
Really?
But in this country, they thought we were speaking French. So the scene was funny in itself, because Jerry, he's, you know, a nebbish. He played a nebbish, and it was a flashback, and he was out. We were out in the forest, and I was in this red coach, and I had to go to the bathroom. So I do it, this whole thing. Je ne qu'est-ce que tu dis pas, je ne qu'est pas. He goes, oh mais oui, qu'est-ce que tu dis, and then subtitles, and he says, and I go. He goes, oui, oui. I go, exactly. It's very funny, and he builds me an outhouse. And I end up flying in the air and falling in the middle of the outhouse, and it's
so it's fun working with Jerry. You became very good friends.
I keep getting those marvelous residuals from that. I bless that man all the time. I said, thank you, Jerry, because I keep coming in.
Francine York, Bedtime. What a movie that was. With David Niven, Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando, yes. It was one of my really, I think, most exciting times, because there I had, and it was when I was a child living in Minnesota. I would go to the movies to see Marlon Brando. I mean, David Niven and Wuthering Heights. Here I am with Marlon Brando on one side and David on the other.
Look at this. This is Marlon and you. And you played an Italian?
I played Italian. When I went in to audition for it with Stanley Shapiro, who was the producer, they wanted me for the role of a model, and I said, but I speak Italian. He said, you do? I said, sì, io conosco solo poche parole, mi manca la pratica. He says, you got the job.
It's great.
So
you speak Italian? This is David Niven?
Yes, it's David Niven.
Oh, what a great actor.
He was a con artist in this, and I was set up as a decoy to keep Marlon on the train. And these pictures were taken in a one-day photo session, and David answered the phone for me, or answered the phone, said hello. And this was on a set, and they said, who's this call for? Francine. He said, oh, this is Francine York's secretary. I love that man. I think the expression joie de vivre was really David. It was very exciting.
Working with Brando. I mean, you were very young, Francine.
Yes,
very young.
I was a child. Well, Brando is an interesting man. Spending all this time with him, I found him wonderful to work with, terribly insecure. Wanted the director there all the time, the producer. He felt a little insecure playing comedy. This was his first comedy role. So I thought to myself, here's this great Marlon Brando, a little bit frightened of this part. I will never be afraid ever again in my life. And I adored him.
Sophia Loren, wasn't it? Was that Sophia in that? Sophia?
In this picture?
Yes.
No.
Who was in that?
Shirley Jones.
Shirley Jones. That, I can
But after this, I went on to play every Italian role in town. I had the dark hair at the time. Now, if I play them, I'll just put on the dark hair, you know. Have wigs will travel, whatever they need.
Then, Francine, you did a television show. You had your own series, like Wild. Go ahead. What was it?
Well, I was on Slattery's People. I played Richard Crenna's secretary.
Right.
That. And I did things like
Wild West.
Wild West. Yes, I was the guest star on that. I played a doctor at Alcatraz. And it was an interesting story. You know, Robert Conrad is not too tall.
No.
So this was the second to the last show. And when the director called me in, he says, you know, he says, you're very, very tall. He says, I don't know. A day later, they called me back. He says, Francine, I read 40 girls. You've just become the shortest girl in town. Because they needed authority. There's one thing I can do is boss everybody around very well. Authority. So I got the part. So he walked on the holes, or I walked on the holes, he walked on the hills, and nobody knew that there was a height difference because he could carry it this way. And Bob said to me, why didn't they ever hire you before? I said, oh my God, why not? Second to the last show, you know, but I think they were trying to protect their star.
Did you study acting in San Francisco or in Minnesota?
Well, I was in all the class plays back in this little town, little mining town.
So you always wanted to be an actress?
Always. Always. I wrote my first play in the 4th grade. I played Cinderella's sister, Griselda, which was supposed to be one of the ugly sisters. And I was very upset, but I found out I stole the show. And I realized that playing character parts and comedy parts and things like that were really it. And I have been doing that sort of thing since.
You're one of the busiest ladies in Hollywood. You said character parts, comedy parts. That's what you do. You do all roles.
I have played so many variety of things. I think the one, though, that when I was on Days of Our Lives, I played I was a hooker, ex-hooker. They're always ex-hookers, or they're hookers who become good after. And I was a blackmailer, and I bribed Jed Allen with his illegitimate daughter, ruined his political campaign, left my daughter in juvenile hall, and ran off with a rich Texan. And I was telling the story on an airplane when I was flying home to Minnesota, and this woman across the aisle was watching me, and she said, my God, what a life this woman has led. Here I was telling the stewardess the story of what I was doing on the soap opera.
Tell me about this.
This was Heck Ramsey, and this was, I don't remember the name of the show.
God, what an interesting face.
I did a lot of westerns. I played Lily Langtry in westerns. It was called Heck Ramsey. Yes,
yes,
Richard Boone, that was what it was.
Tell me about this one. Look how beautiful.
That's the Wild Wild West. You can see on there that we're really not. I don't look any taller than him.
Francine, tell me.
That's Mr.
Belvedere. You're just on it.
Yes, I had a reoccurring part last year, and I kind of did the whole thing with a Brooklyn accent. And this next picture right there, this is the boy that I tried to seduce in the backseat of my car. My first line was, so I says to my ex, I says, Lou, the minute the ink is dry in the divorce papers, I'm going to jump the first set of young bones that gets in my way, and that's you, sweet cheeks. And
so this is a sweet cheeks.
I was drinking champagne out of my shoe while trying to seduce him in the backseat of the limo. And that ain't easy to do, I got to tell you.
I love your characters. You do so many accents. My God.
So many accents, yeah.
How about this?
This show is running constantly.
Mama.
I have to tell you, everybody calls, I played Grandma Francine.
Right.
And she says, well, if she's a grandma, I'm Vanna White. And I end up winning this beauty contest for all the grandmas, Grandma USA.
Right.
It's very exciting.
But this is the space thing? This is what's...
This, I think I will go down in history as being Neolani, Queen of the Amazons, Lost in Space, Irwin Allen. Just the other day at the Academy, a young boy came over to me and says, Miss York, will you sign this picture? And he had a copy of this. It's become a cult series.
Right.
Kind of exciting. I think you have the Jerry Lewis.
Francine, this is Jerry Lewis, yes.
Let me show
this.
When I play the French Marquise, that's the way. I looked in that. Jerry with
There's
that
Jerry.
wonderful, wide-eyed, mouth open wide there. God, he was wonderful to work with. I had a
Is he really?
Yes, he really is.
A lot of people just say he's difficult, Francine.
Well,
Come on.
I tell you,
Not because you're so close to him.
All right, let me say this about Jerry. He's an overly talented man. He has too much genius, I think.
Right.
He's very loyal to his friends. He would call back the same people continually. Now, when we'd done this picture, I hadn't seen him in years, and he said, we went in for the reading, and he said, God, it seems like we've sat and talked like this before. It was like we hadn't seen each other in about 10 years.
Right.
And we bantered back and forth, the fractured friends. He says, what are you doing here? You're hired. Get out. And there was a girl coming up the steps, I noticed, and she was coming in for the part. I thought, well, sorry, I got the role, you know. It's very
Paris. Jerry Lewis is so loved in France.
Oh, he is. He really
Know
is.
why? They keep fans. They love their fans.
They do.
Regardless of what they do, they love their fans.
Well, I think Jerry is truly one of the most talented, and I just treasure the fact that I was able to start off my career and learn from this really wonderful man.
Tell me about Tom Selleck. Is it true? There was an article about you in the Enquirer.
I have to tell you.
Something about Tom Selleck and you. Come on.
The 5-alarmer, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
Well,
Is that a true story about Tom and
the
you?
only thing that's true about the story is how I met Tom. I was at a gas station dressed in this very, I guess you could say sexy, I don't know, yellow outfit, and I see this gorgeous man pulling up. My car was overheating, and I couldn't believe it. I said, my God, that's the most beautiful man I've ever seen. This was before he became Magnum and so forth. And then I saw him leave, and he came back. And he was waiting there, and he said he'd like to talk to me. So we talked, and he said, well, I'm Tom Selleck. We have lunch sometime. So we had lunch, and we spent like a day together, and that was sort of it. And then years later, we met at a party. They took pictures of us, put it in the Enquirer, and all of a sudden, they built this whole story.
They built the whole thing around you.
And they said, like, I love you, he loves me. They said that I was going back and forth to Hawaii. In the meantime, I had a boyfriend. So my boyfriend's little son says, well, Daddy, how could she love you if she loves Tom Selleck? I said, that's showbiz. What can I tell you? He's a darling man.
Is he?
He's a sweetheart.
Francine York, do you have a man in your life right now?
Yes,
You do?
Yes.
Yes? Really?
Yes.
You seem very happy.
I'm very happy.
Yes?
Yes, I'm very happy.
Francine York spiritual?
She's very spiritual.
Is she?
Yes. And I think this is why that everything is. I think life without spirituality. I don't believe there is life without it. And I think that. How could I have survived? I've been in this business, 29 years. And how can one survive in Hollywood without this? I always try to tell my friends, as a man seeth himself in his heart, so is he, or as a man seeth himself in his heart, so is he. You have to really believe a lot, have a tremendous amount of faith, and know that somewhere, somehow, things are going to work out. I'm a living and breathing example of that. People wonder, what's the key to staying young? They think, is it running off and having 7 facelifts, which most people do? I haven't had any of that work.
Within?
I said it is totally within me. Plus, I have good Yugoslavian genes. What can I do?
Okay.
That's really my secret. No, I think it's spirit. I think it's how you feel. And
how you feel?
I've never been married.
Never been married.
Never been married. And I would just always say that someday there was going to be that right man. And everyone said, well, Francine, someday, things are winding up a little. You're not getting any younger. I said, well, yes, I am.
Has there been the right man that came along, Francine?
You think so along the line somehow, and you try, but somehow they never worked out. And I said, no, I want to be married, and I want to stay married.
I see.
I don't want to marry 20 times and be the ex-Mrs. So-and-so. I don't want to marry somebody for the money so I can have all the... I want to marry because it's just right. And who knows what can happen now.
You have all these wonderful accents. Now you're doing something, a one-woman show of Gretchen. A German lady, a German lady. Tell me about this.
Well, I was on a plane going home to Minnesota to visit my parents last year, and I sat down with this woman named Gretchen Kraus.
Right.
And she told me her story. It was very interesting. And I asked her, I said, I would like to do this someday as a one-woman show or something. May I have permission? She said, certainly. And we've been in contact. And what it is, can I do just a little bit of it?
Please, I'd love to. Love to see it.
My name is... She's being interrogated.
Right.
My name is Gretchen Kraus. I was married to an SS officer, and one day he wants me to go to Auschwitz. They were going to have a special kind of a reunion for the wives and to show them everything. So we go and we have the champagne, the drinks, and they take us into this big room. And in this room, there is all the jewelry and all the things that they took from the prisoners. My husband
he said to me, go, go, take. And I stand there, I don't want to touch it. I could see the eyes of the prisoners as I walk into the camp, and the big eyes and the bodies, they were so skinny, they were looking at me. I could see nothing but the bones. So my husband, he pushed me into the pile. And my hand, she go on top. And I look, and it was a skull with the gold teeth inside. I was crying, and my husband, he said to me, he said, don't cry, everybody is going to see you cry. And I could not help what he was doing. So after this, my husband, he come home, and he wanted to make love to me. I could not go near him. In the meantime, I met before this an American officer, and he fell in love with me, and he was him, but I was married. So my husband, he died. He get crushed by a tank. So I want to marry Frank. I go to the Americans, and there was a lot of things happening. Yes. But even now, sometimes in the nighttime, I cry because I could not believe that this husband I was married to for so many years was this terrible man. So that is what happened.
But we have peace in Berlin today, Francine, because right now we have a gentleman who is a photographer, an entrepreneur. He just came back from Berlin, and he brought the writings on the wall.
Oh, that's very exciting.
A wonderful photographer who took pictures, actual pictures, of the Berlin Wall being chipped away of that evening. Terry Tillman, tell me about that evening of that wonderful, exciting chipping on the walls.
The emotion I experienced from that was very much like what I was experiencing sitting next to Francine.
Right.
I get why you're a successful actress. I mean, I don't know, could you feel
yes,
the
yes,
energy
very
that
much
comes
so.
present?
Very much so.
Beautiful job.
But
And
tell
the
me,
emotion of that moment
right.
when the wall opened up was, well, first of all, it was very emotional.
Right.
And it was an emotion that it wasn't just it was beyond emotion to me. You were talking about spirit. To me, it was a spirit that came present.
Right.
And maybe it was the completion of what, 50 years ago, the Holocaust. Maybe it was the end of that. I tend to believe it was. Indescribable. What you saw on television, I don't think was, while it was good, it wasn't something that could replace being there. It was like the family of man reuniting. I met maybe 20 people, 20 different representatives from 20 different countries, who were together as if they were long-lost relatives, in joy and celebration, not like a cocktail party with champagne, although it was like the cocktail party without champagne.
I like to show this. This is what you're trying to tell me.
That was very typical.
Is that what you're trying to tell me?
This picture is an East and West German, East and West Berliner, didn't know each other. And yet,
they didn't even know each other.
Didn't know.
Isn't that
strangers,
exciting?
And yet, do they look strange? Do they look estranged there? Not at all.
But actually, you put your camera, you took your camera there, and you start taking pictures.
I did.
Were you there for that reason, to take pictures, or just you happened to be there?
I was there for that reason.
For that reason?
Yeah, the idea, and it was an inspiration, showed up about a year and a half before the wall opened up, when I first visited the wall.
Right.
I was very struck by the writings on the wall.
Right.
That's the name of the book.
The writings on the wall is the book.
The wall.
It's great. Look at this.
The wall is 106 miles long.
Right.
45 miles of it was concrete. Almost that entire concrete was painted with graffiti.
Right.
And it wasn't like New York subway graffiti. It was profound, it was poetic, it was humorous, it had pathos, it was magnificent to me. And I thought, boy, the world ought to see this.
What do you mean by words? You, in your book right now, you have some quotes here. I'd like to show. We can pick out the quotes and I'll show this.
Well,
look at this,
what I've
Francine.
done is juxtapose.
Is this great? Look at that.
I've juxtaposed the pictures with quotations because the pictures told me. I've collected quotations most of my life.
Yes.
When I saw the event and the paintings on the wall, they just brought forth the wisdom in those one-liners, those short paragraphs. You were talking about the spirit that's present. I'm glad you brought that up because it was a spirit present for me. Like my favorite quote is in the book is one from Napoleon. There are only two powers in the world.
Right.
The spirit and the sword. And in the long run, the spirit will always prevail over the sword. This is Napoleon, a man who spent most of his life as a warrior. You don't identify him as someone who would save it, who would come to that wisdom, yet he did. I think that's one of the messages of the wall coming down. It's the wisdom that's present. The spirit of humanity is insuppressible. I think that's what will save us from the Iraq situation.
Yes. Would you read one of your quotes there?
I've got lots of them.
Well, just right now, let's
Man must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love.
That's true.
Martin Luther King.
That's great.
What I found as I was researching the quotes and as I've collected them is that great teachers, great leaders have all said pretty consistently the same sort of thing. The messages are pretty basic and consistent. That's one of them. Another message that showed up repeatedly through teachings through the eons is if each man sweep before his own door, then the entire street would be clean. That was Goethe who said that. But the idea is that the way we're going to have peace in the world is if each individual by himself establishes a peaceful environment inside.
Look at that little boy there.
Children, yeah.
Children.
There's some great...
There must have been tears. You must have seen a lot of tears in
Well,
their
I
eyes.
experienced a lot of tears in my eyes.
Did you really?
And I saw a lot of them, of course,
Right.
too. It was a very moving experience.
The older
tears
people.
of
Tell me
joy.
about the older people.
Well, some of those are in here, too.
Yeah,
There's
but
some-
older people must have been great for them, right?
It was marvelous. I've got one sequence of pictures where there's a man with a briefcase coming on his way home from work to chop down a piece of the wall. And it's still this way a little bit today,
Right.
even over a year later. As you approach the wall, before you'd even see it, you would hear the sound of the chipping. Then you'd see these thousands of people chipping away at the wall. I think both to...
Actual thousands.
Thousands. Well, probably tens of
Yeah.
thousands. I mean, there was a mob present. I rode a bicycle along maybe 35 miles of it, and for 20 of those 35 miles, there were crowds of people.
And how long were you there?
Several trips. The
Several
first
trips?
trip, right when the wall first opened up, I
Right.
was there maybe 10 days. I went back in February for about a week.
Tell me about this. This is
Isn't
interesting.
that a marvelous
This
picture?
is an interesting
That,
picture.
you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. That's an East and West Berlin soldier shaking hands.
Oh, isn't that?
That's, yeah.
Gave me chills.
And the quote next to it says, "From where the sun now stands, I will fight no more forever."
Oh,
That was Chief Joseph, and
That's
first
wonderful.
thesis associated with nonviolence.
Look at this, the celebration of Berlin. This is beautiful.
That's what it was. That's on the cover of the book also.
Oh,
The
yes.
fireworks. It was the food
This is a
celebration.
beautiful book. It's
thank you.
called Written
The Writings on the
The
Wall.
Writings on the Wall.
Double entendre. Both because it predicted the fall of the wall, the writing predicted this, and also what's written on the wall is worth looking at.
But you're a singer. You started but you're actually from Oregon, are you?
Well, I grew up in Oregon. I was actually born in Hollywood,
Oh, really?
California. Yeah. One of the few probably was.
So you were with the New Christie Minstrels.
Yes,
You're
I-
an original New Christie Minstrel
I
singer.
was one of the very first 11 New Christie Minstrels.
Uh-huh.
A group started by Randy Sparks, and people still remember the group.
How did that group started? I mean, that's
Randy
an interesting
started it
group.
with an idea. This was in the early 60s, 1961.
Right.
And that was, as you might remember, that was an era when folk music was very popular.
Yes.
Peter, Paul, and Mary, the Kingston Trio, the Lion
Right.
Riders. And I was singing in a group called the Fairmount Singers. Randy was our mentor, kind of our manager. And he had this idea. He wanted to put a group together, a large group of smaller groups. He had a group called the Randy Sparks Three. Originally, there was a group called the Travelers Three, and these three groups got together.
Right.
Then the Travelers Three left, and Art and Paul, another group, came together. And it was a group of groups, and at the time, we thought the idea was absurd. You know? I mean, four of us in a group were struggling, doing pretty well, but not that well. And we didn't think 11 people could even fit on a stage, let alone make a living doing it. They were.
So you toured all over the world with this group,
Yeah.
entertaining
Yeah.
all over.
I've traveled most of my
Did you
life.
enjoy that? Did you?
I really did.
Yeah.
I loved it.
And then what happened
I have
to-
a little regret. I dropped out of college to be part of this singing experience, and I had a lot of family pressure to return to college.
I see.
And I gave in to the pressure. I
Photography.
regretted that.
What happened to?
How did that
Where'd
happen?
that all happen?
Well, originally when I went to Berlin with the idea of the book, I was bringing a professional photographer with me. I'm not a professional photographer.
Oh, okay.
And 2 hours before the plane flight over there, literally, he decided not to go. I've taken pictures, and I was a photographer in the high school annual. You know,
I
it's
see.
about the limit of my professional experience. I know a little bit about it, but it's not how I make a living.
But you decided before you got on that plane, you were going to make a book about it.
I had, it was a vision, you know.
I see.
For me,
I see.
inspired. It's
It's
like
a
I
very-
saw ahead of time what this was going to be, and that's pretty much what I saw.
Very good vision, isn't it, Francine?
Beautiful, very
It
impressive.
brings people together. That whole thing. You help a lot of people. You also produced mentally retarded children.
It's a documentary called Very Special People. It's involved with Hope University, which is in Anaheim. And I'm on-screen host.
Yes.
And also the producer. and we were working with 4 of the 10 or 12 known savants.
Right.
So they used to call idiot savants.
Uh-huh.
Now they're called either prodigious or talented or multiple.
Uh-huh.
And also there, at the school there's autism and Fragile X and PKUs. I knew nothing before I started on this, and now I find myself, it's fascinating. And a love, you want love?
Yes.
Someone said, doesn't this depress you to go to the school and see all these people? I have never had as much love from from 40 people in a given time. And when I come in, it's Francine, and the hugs and loves, and we love you.
Lovely.
They draw you little things and say, we love you. Oh,
That's what's worth living.
It's worth living.
That's what's worth living for. And you do a wonderful thing in seminars.
Seminars.
Yeah, Sally Kirkland called me, and she says, oh, God, Terry Tillman, he's great.
Yeah,
Tell me, Terry.
Sally's great, too. She's one of the best promoters I've ever run into.
No, but tell me.
I conduct seminars with an organization called Insight Seminars.
Insight.
Do them all over the world.
Right.
I have personal effectiveness, leadership, personal growth, and actually one of the concepts in the seminar is the idea of returning to the child inside. There's a wisdom in the child inside that every one of us has.
We have, yes.
That is naturally beautiful and magnificent and very loving. And from that source or that center, people can do amazing things. So a lot of what we do is...
How do we find ourselves inside the child inside?
Everyone can do it, and that's why we conduct seminars, to give people the experience. We don't just tell them, they come and do it. And how do you do it? Basically, you go inside.
Inside yourself.
And so there's a lot of stuff between the outside that we present to the world and who we really are inside. So we've got to wade through some of that, the walls we put up there. In fact,
I don't like the world today, what's happening, though, guys. I must tell you.
You don't?
No, I don't
I'm
like...
either Pollyanna or an optimist.
Really?
I see everywhere I go, I see the goodness in people.
Goodness. Well, I like that word.
Like
I try to.
The glass
I like that.
is always half
full.
That's the razor's edge. That's the razor's edge.
And sometimes you got to go past the stuff that's in the way. But here was this Berlin Wall.
That's the razor's edge.
Was a magnificent example of the goodness of people. Here were people who had been literally separated physically by a wall, by idealism, by ideologies. They were communists and capitalists. They were the good guys and the bad guys in the East and the West. But in their heart, in the humanity of who they are, they came right together and were good. And that goodness, I think, is why the wall came down.
I wish everyone would think like you do, Terry.
Well, that's why we do seminars.
Maybe if people like us and others connect and we slowly, there are a lot of wonderful people out trying to do a lot of good things, and eventually something has to change. The pendulum has to swing somewhere.
I like, first of all, I like what's happening about the wall. That's coming down. That's great. That is so good, Terry.
Don't forget, in a way, it was a shame that the Iraq incident showed up so soon after we were beginning to reunify. It wasn't just... The wall coming down wasn't just a German event.
Yes.
It was an international, worldwide event.
Yes.
That we all participated in. And I hope we don't forget that for a while.
I don't think so. I really don't. I think, but I just don't like what's happening back in that Middle East.
No.
I'm afraid of them. I really am afraid of them. I think we wasted too much time. I think we should have taken care of it a long time ago.
Well, I have a lot of faith in people.
You do?
Just as I think
well,
it was
because you
people,
say your goodness. You look goodness into people. That's what you said.
But it's been demonstrated. The people of this country are the ones who really ended the Vietnam War.
Right.
It wasn't a political military decision to stop
Right.
it, and I think those same people will stop whatever is negative in Iraq. I just think, they will.
Hollywood. Have you enjoyed living in Hollywood, working in Hollywood all these years? Do you have any regrets, Francine York, about being an actress here in Hollywood?
I think that my regret would have been if I stayed in that little town in Minnesota and not have done this, because it was my dream. And how many people get to have that dream?
True.
I used to just be this little girl going to all these movies, and I'd get to my bed at night and I'd think, oh, someday I want to go to Hollywood and be glamorous and be a movie star. And somehow I think that out-picturing, as they call it in metaphysics, thinking, planning, this is what people should do in their lives, instead of thinking of the negative things, well, it'll never happen to me, how is it going to happen? I said, someday, somehow, and I was literally scooped up. It was like destiny, something, I don't know.
You've
and it
got
works.
to make your own thing
work. You got to, it's like...
I agree.
And as you go on, a lot of people, they get themselves into patterns, and I always get quote from the Bible, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. What you have